History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spectacular people. Welcome to History Goes Bump Redux. I'm your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this Redux, we're going to redo the Skirvin Hotel.
Looking forward to it.
Are you ready to go back?
I'm ready. Westward expansion was pulling people from the east into the Wild West. Oklahoma City was booming, and it called to a man named William Skirvin. He built a hotel that has survived into today. The Skirvin Hotel was meant to be the most grandiose and fancy hotel in the area. And it was, hosting some of the luminaries of the day. Now it seems to be hosting spirits alongside the living. Join us as we explore the history and hauntings of the Skirvin Hotel.
The 1830s saw things changing drastically for the Native American people. President Andrew Jackson's first major piece of legislation was the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This allowed the government to evict the Native Americans east of the Mississippi River from the lands they were living upon. Most people are familiar with the Trail of Tears. This was the route that these evicted Native Americans followed into what was deemed Indian Territory in the West. 5 main tribes were affected, and these tribes were the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Muskogee, and the Seminole. They are referred to as the 5 civilized tribes. The reason for this name is that Native Americans had been encouraged to learn to read and speak English and convert to Christianity, and these 5 tribes adopted those customs, deeming them as civilized to the white Americans. The journey on the Trail of Tears was difficult and deadly. It ended in Oklahoma, which was known as Indian Territory.
The western part of Oklahoma was considered unassigned land, and so many pioneers decided to settle in that area, which included Oklahoma City. These pioneers were called boomers, and the government was not happy with them, basically squatting on this land. So it held a series of land runs so these pioneers could claim land. A land run is when the government opens up previously restricted land to homesteading. The way the land is claimed is first come, first served, basically. The boomers were not necessarily wrong with what they were doing because the Homestead Act of 1862 stated that settlers could claim 160 acres of public land, and they considered western Oklahoma to be public land. After the land run was announced, some settlers tried to stake their claim to the land before it was legal, and this group was called the Sooners. Fun fact, the University of Oklahoma used boomers as its mascot before changing it to Sooners. Oklahoma became a state in 1907, shortly after the land runs. Guthrie was the territorial capital, but in 1910, Oklahoma City, which was incorporated in 1890, was declared the new capital. Oklahoma City was oil-rich, and this brought about the oil boom, which brought many people to the city. Many of these oilmen would bring about other businesses and trade for the city.
The Skirvin Hilton, Oklahoma City, which is what it's named today, was originally named just the Skirvin Hotel. This is the oldest hotel in Oklahoma City. The name Skirvin came from its founder, William Skirvin, known as WB. It was Skirvin's desire to build a high-class hotel that would be considered the finest accommodations in the area. Skirvin was born on November 10, 1860 in Michigan near Sturgis, and he grew up on the family farm there. Skirvin's mother died when he was 8, and his father left for business, leaving Skirvin and his sister in the care of their grandmother. He lived with her until he was 15, and then he set off on his own, finally ending up in Kansas selling farm machinery.
Skirvin later got into real estate, and when the Oklahoma Territory opened up, he and a partner went in and bought property in Guthrie. He later moved his family, which included 2 daughters and a son, to Galveston, Texas. He survived the hurricane that all but wiped out Galveston in 1900. 6,000 people lost their lives in that storm, and one of those people was nearly Skirvin, who risked his life several times to save others. After losing his home in the storm, he got involved in the oil business. This made him a rich man. He relocated to a growing city in Oklahoma named Oklahoma City in 1906. He again pursued real estate and then set his focus on building a hotel. Before that happened, his wife passed away in 1908. He would never remarry, but rumors would arise later that he carried on a relationship with a maid at the hotel he would soon build. The real truth is that he probably had a relationship with his bookkeeper, Mabel Luddy. She outlived him.
Construction began on the Skirvin Hotel in 1910 at the corner of First Street and Broadway in Oklahoma City. The architects were Solomon Layton, Hicks, and Forsyth, and Kaler Slater. 2 10-story towers were built with 225 rooms. In 1926, a third tower was added that rose to 13 stories. In 1930, all 3 towers were raised to 14 stories to make them all level. The hotel had a total of 525 rooms after that expansion. The lobby's floor was originally laid with white tile, but in later years, carpet covered over the tiles. A newspaper ad in the Daily Oklahoman dated from Sunday, October 1st, 1911 for the opening reads, "The Skirvin Hotel, which has just opened its doors to the public at Oklahoma City, is the best hotel in the Southwest and the most modern in all hoteldom. A sterling hospitality that is unrivaled in its warmth and sincerity radiates everywhere from this splendidly equipped hotel. The Skirvin Hotel is complete in every detail and absolutely fireproof." I always love it when they say that, really.
Mm-hmm.
The rates are as moderate as will be found anywhere. The Skirvin Hotel is 10 stories in height, of pleasing architecture, and contains 225 rooms each with an individual private bath. The lobby of the Skirvin is of English Gothic and furnishes the motif for the decorations and furnishings throughout the interior of the hotel. A comfortable, home-like atmosphere prevails everywhere, which first impresses you with its kindly warmth the moment you enter the lobby. The hotel has 2 large entrances, one from Broadway and the other from First Street. Courteous employees are quick to anticipate your wants and fill them promptly and quietly. This writing is really tiny, so it's hard to see. Convention hall, banquet room, and the mezzanine floor are furnished, and then I couldn't read this part, luxurious style. And I can't read this part, lighting system is used. The grill room in the basement and the cafe on the first floor are sumptuously furnished, and then I couldn't read the rest of that. Afternoon tea will be served in the tea room, which adjoins the mezzanine floor. The tea room has been daintily decorated by hand in delicate designs and will be the afternoon rendezvous for fashionable people from all over the state. Special care is provided for unaccompanied women and children, and a maid attends to their every want and comfort with constant attention. I'm going to go to this place, wherever that exists.
Yeah.
There's not a more modern kitchen anywhere than that which serves the excellent meals provided at the Skirvin. Everything is snowy white. Absolute cleanliness prevails to the last degree. All the tables, shelving, etc. are of white, some kind of metal I can't read. Here, as in the cafe, is a superb ventilation system, and the cold storage is the latest design. A capable chef is in charge of a corps of seasoned experts who have reduced cooking to a known science. Mr. Frederick W. Sherable, general manager of the Skirvin Hotel, has a wide acquaintance with and knowledge of the needs of the traveling public of the Southwest, and in this hotel has met their every requirement. No better host nor hotel can be found anywhere. Well, I'm sold.
Same.
I would read this today and go, and it's got roaches and the roof leaks, right?
Oh my gosh, you're terrible. Peggy Woolwich, a desk clerk in the 1940s, said of her experience at the hotel, "It was great working at the Skirvin. I was there when Bob Hope came. It was an elegant place, overstuffed chairs, guests sitting in the lobby reading the paper. I also danced for Catherine Duffy at WKY in the Skirvin Tower. A lot of people from New York would come in for showings of clothes, and I would model for them. The Skirvin was more elite than the other hotels. The Biltmore was good, but it just didn't compare to the Skirvin.
And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors. Skirvin's daughter was Pearl Mesta. She was the American ambassador to Luxembourg. She was dubbed the hostess with the mostest because she hosted the best and most lavish parties in Washington, D.C. for dignitaries. An invitation to one of her parties meant that one had truly arrived and was now a part of the inner circle. Irving Berlin's musical Call Me Madam is about Mesta. On March 12, 1944, Skirvin was in a severe car accident and sustained several life-threatening injuries. He lingered until March 25th and then passed away from his injuries. His necrology was written by Fred P. Branson and ends with, "It can justly be said that he was one of the outstanding stalwart citizens of Oklahoma, his adopted state, and his efforts produce marks of progress which are now and will continue to be for a long number of years not only useful institutions, but monuments to his efforts and name."
Dan James, a hotelier, bought the hotel from Skirvin's children after his death. He paid $3 million for the property and held on to it for 20 years. The next 23 years saw the hotel passing through many hands. Some of the famous people that stayed at the hotel included Jimmy Hoffa, Roger Staubach, Harry Truman, Frank Sinatra, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Elvis, Mikhail Baryshnikov, and Bob Hope. The hotel was segregated during much of this time, and blacks could only enter if they worked on the custodial or banquet staff.
The Skirvin Hotel was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1979. Nearly 10 years later, in 1988, the hotel closed. It stood abandoned for 15 years, but after a $46.4 million renovation, it was once again opened. Interestingly, before this project, a Native American group came in with a proposal to turn the hotel into a casino. The restoration tried to bring the hotel back to its historical roots by incorporating the same designs in the tiles, ceiling treatments, and moldings as the original hotel. Historically accurate windows were installed, and the exterior was finished as it had once been. Upgrades were made in meeting rooms to make them state-of-the-art, new elevators were installed, the lobby was updated, new restaurants were opened, and guest rooms were updated. The restored Skirvin Hilton reopened in February of 2007 and continues to serve the people of Oklahoma City. In the pictures I saw, this place is just gorgeous inside.
It is thought that during the Prohibition years, high-class social escorts may have made their way to the Skirvin Hotel and made their way past the main desk to serve as gentlemen guests. Being that the hotel is so big, it would be hard to keep track of what was going on in all 225 guest rooms. It is thought that one of these young women may have been killed in one of the rooms. Guests of the hotel have said that they have heard the cries and screams of a woman. Strange noises and items being moved by an unseen presence have also been reported. Male guests have reported hearing a disembodied female voice proposition them. Sometimes, when a male guest is showering, a naked female appears in the bathroom. One male guest reported waking up to an amorous female entity in his bed. Is this the ghost of one of those high-class escorts?
Apparently, if a guy doesn't mind getting a little bit of haunting activity, this is the place for you to stay.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if they expect you to leave, some money on the table too, or
on the dresser.
It's also rumored that W.B. Skirvin himself had an affair with a young maid and a pregnancy resulted. To avoid a scandal and what would quite possibly be the ruin of his name, Skirvin is said to have held the maid captive on the top of the 14th floor during and after her pregnancy. The woman was in such distress that she would scream and bang on the door, but no one would help her. She eventually went mad and jumped out a window to her death with her baby in her arms. That's one version of the story. Another version leaves Skirvin completely out of the story, but reports the same story about the maid jumping from the ledge with her baby. Perhaps she was suffering from a combination of postpartum depression, abandonment by her lover, and a sense of hopelessness. The name of the maid is unknown, and so in the 1970s and 1980s, the staff took to calling the apparition Effie. Her apparition has been seen wandering up and down the hallways. She has also been seen standing near the window she jumped from. One witness said they saw Effie run to the window like she was going to go out, and then faded away into nothing. It is also said that the cries of the baby can be heard and has been known to keep female guests awake. The cleaning carts have been seen rolling up and down the halls with no staff in sight as well. Again, if you want to clean as a ghost, you are more than welcome anywhere around me.
Starting around 2010, after the Skirvin had reopened and the Thunder basketball team moved to Oklahoma City, other NBA teams would stay at the Skirvin when coming into play. The New York Knicks claimed creaks and groans caused a sleepless night that then caused them to lose the game against the Thunder the next night.
Sure, we'll come up with any kind of excuse for losing. The ghosts made us sleepless, so we couldn't play as well.
I'm too tired. A player for the Chicago Bulls could not explain why his bathroom door slammed shut and why there were strange noises out in the hallways. A player for the Phoenix Suns woke to find his bathtub filled with water. Sports commentator Reggie Miller phoned in to the Dan Patrick radio show to talk about the NBA playoffs. He mentioned his experience with Effie the ghost. Miller said that when he went to bed, he placed his water bottle on the nightstand, and when he woke up, it was somewhere else. For him, this confirmed the legend of Effie.
Maybe he sleepwalks too.
Possibly.
Moved his own water bottle.
Meta World Peace had an encounter with Effie in 2016. He said, "The ghosts were all over me. I just accepted it. They touched me all over the place. I'm taking one of the ghosts to court for touching me in the wrong places." Okie
Can you imagine that story in the news? NBA basketball player sues ghost for molesting him.
Uh-huh.
The New York Magazine reported in 2010, "Sure, the Knicks got blown out by the Thunder last night, but they have a perfectly reasonable excuse for this one. Their hotel was haunted." Jared Jeffries was among those convinced the hotel was haunted, but his plight is nothing compared to that of poor Eddie Curry. It seems that the woman who may or may not have leaped to her death did so from the 10th floor, and Curry was the only Knick who had the misfortune of staying there. He was so scared, and this is where it gets really adorable, that he ended up spending most of his time in Nate Robinson's room. The visual, by the way, of little Nate Robinson protecting big Eddie Curry, who is 7 feet, 295 pounds, from anything, ghosts or otherwise, is priceless. Curry added that he only slept for 2 hours because of his paralyzing fear of the hotel's supernatural guests. Only assistant coach Herb Williams seemed to appreciate the hilarity of all this, though we imagine he couldn't find Curry's lack of sleep so funny if Curry were actually in the Knicks rotation. Probably because Williams, like us, realizes that this is a Harlem Globetrotters jersey away from being a pretty excellent episode of Scooby-Doo.
Jesse Powell was a security guard who worked at the hotel during renovations. He wrote, "I actually worked security during its renovation. I worked while the building was being cleaned and restored. I can tell you for sure that the building is haunted. My partner and I were up on the 6th floor, looking out a window, and we heard someone running up the stairs. The building had been locked up tightly, and no one could have possibly gotten in. So we took off down the hall and up the stairs, me at one end and my partner at the other. We ran all the way up, checking each floor, and found no one. Many times we heard people in the hallways and looked out and found no one there."
A cook has claimed to hear pots and pans banging into each other at night, and upon investigation found no one else in the kitchen. Guests report other strange oddities. Could it be that some spirits from the past are still making the Skirvin their home? Is the Skirvin Hotel haunted? That is for you to decide. If you guys have stayed at the Skirvin and had any, experiences that you can share on a family-friendly podcast.
We don't need details of inappropriate touching.
We'd love to know. Well, thank you guys for joining us on this Redux. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.